See how important it is that Candace is here. See how important it is that every one of us is here. Every one of us has got a gift and a talent, and all of us have got the gift of helps. And remember, when you get a certain age, you can get kind of feeble-minded. But anyway, I'm not going to try to preach what Tony Evans preached on providence. But as I did, it provoked me to go back and read Joseph again, and Joseph's life. I was telling the young people back in the back there that they ought to come up front. I got a message tonight for young people, and of course it's for anybody. The title of my message, I titled it, How to Win When Wronged. Joseph, if you're not familiar with the story of Joseph, at 17, a young boy, he was sent by his father to his brothers there, who was taking care of their sheep down at Shechem, and he had irritated him because of the fact that when he was with them, when they did wrong, he went and told his father, and some people would call him a tattletale, but I walked through the living room the other day, and Lois had a TV on there, and is doing a commercial there, and what's his name, the Virginian, and he was doing an advertisement, and he said, when you see trouble, you either deal with it or you become a part of it. And so Joseph, I guess, decided to deal with the rowdiness that his brothers was doing and do something about it. So he told his father, and anyway, angered them. And so when he gets sent to them at 17, they're going to first, they're going to kill him, and then Reuben talks him into, his oldest brother talks him into not killing him, put him in a pit here. Reuben had the idea of coming back later and getting him out. But while Reuben was away, some caravan came through, and Judah, being Jewish, saw an opportunity to make money here. So let's don't just let him die there. Let's sell him. We'll get something out of him here. So they sell him to the caravan going down to Egypt, where he is sold into slavery there. And after a while, God blesses him. It's interesting when you read the story, a number of times it will say, and God was with Joseph. And listen, if we're a child of God, it doesn't matter where we're at. It doesn't matter what kind of day we're having. It doesn't matter, whether we're wronged or not wronged. The thing is, God is with us, and God is in control, and God allows things to happen in order that he might grow us into that child of God that he wants us to be, if we will be obedient. And as I was thumbing through here, and I try to write this down real quickly, I hope that I can see it all. But law number 1 here, I'm going to give you 7 laws, young people, that you can take to the bank with you, so to speak. And law number 1 is the law of happenings. What does that mean? Well, that means things are going to happen. All right. Sometimes, you don't get up in the morning, and the other day I got up, loaded my lawnmower, headed down to the church, got half a block from the house, and noticed that it didn't sound right back there, and I looked back there, and I had a flat tire on the trailer, and had to turn around and go back, and things will happen. And we can let those things, like I did Thursday, we can let those things aggravate us, rob us of our peace and our joy, or we can know that God has a purpose and God is in control. Nothing can happen to us that isn't for our good. Isn't that what the Bible says? Romans 8:28 says, all things work together for good for those who love the Lord, who are called according to his purpose. 2 things there. Number 1, if we want to claim that promise, we need to make sure that we love the Lord. And number 2, we need to realize that God has a purpose, and even when we get thrown into the pit or get sold into slavery, as Joseph did, God is still knows what's happening. God is still with us, and we can just rest in him. And so when we look at Joseph between chapters 37 and chapter 41, and you might turn to 41 if you want to. Much of the message is kind of taken from 41, but between 37 and 41, Joseph dreams two dreams. I'm confident Joseph was blessed. If you had a dream, and in your dream you dreamed that one day you're going to be in control. Even mom and dad and brothers, the older brothers, are going to be submissive to you. That would have to, make you feel good that God would honor you in such a way. Not so much that you would have control or be in charge over anybody, but the fact that God would honor you is such a deal. The only problem is when he told his brothers, they despised him because they said, what are you saying? We're going to bow down to you. And then when he has his second dream, and it's alluded to in Revelation chapter 12. The woman and the son, and they're dressed with the sun and the moon and the 12 stars there is a picture of Israel there back in the 37th chapter of Genesis. And anyway, he tells the second dream, and even his father comes down on him. What do you mean? Are you saying that your father and your mother and your brothers are going to bow down to you? And no doubt with a scolding there that could have got him down had he not known and had that nature that God gave him the dream. It's a good dream. It will come to pass, and all I've got to do is be patient. But rule number one is the law of happenings. When something happens that appears to be wrong, just claim Romans 8:28. All things work together for good for those who love the Lord and who are called according to his purpose. And just say, I don't know why this happened. I don't understand what God is doing right now, but I know it's for my good, so thank you, God, and I'll bear with you on this till you reveal a further truth to me. Secondly is the law of honesty. If you come over in chapter 41 there, Joseph, after he gets down to Egypt, he notice that, number one, Joseph is a conscientious, hard worker. To the extent that everybody he is associated with wants to put him in charge. When he gets down to Potiphar's house there, he puts him in charge of his household there. And then while Potiphar's gone, his wife tries to seduce Joseph, and Joseph refuses her. And consequently, she falsely accuses him, has him put into prison, and he's in prison there for 2 years. And in the prison, he is going to have a butler and a butcher come to him with dreams that they had. And one of them's a good dream. You're going to be returned to your proper position there. Pharaoh is going to smile upon you. They're talking to the chief butler. But when he gets down to the other fellow there, he is honest. I'm sure it would have been hard for him to say to him, when he heard Joseph say that to the butler there that, boy, you're going to be elevated, you're going to be taken back in, and everything's going to be okay. Man, tell me my dream. What's going to happen to me? And Joseph is honest in sharing with him what was going to happen to him, and that he would be hanged. Law number 2 is the law of honesty. There in chapter 41, verses 9 down through verse 18. Not going to take time to read all of that, but how important it is that we be honest, that we walk with integrity, that that our lives is guarded and controlled by the fact that we want to please God in everything, and when we want to please God more than we do any other individual, then walking in integrity is not hard. Being honest comes easier, but we need to be honest to ourselves, honest to our families, honest to, honest to everybody that we encounter that comes affects our lives. And then there's a third law, and that is the law of hope. Look in verse 14 of chapter 41 here. In verse 14 says, Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and he shaved himself and changed his raiment, and come in unto Pharaoh there, and no doubt a spark of hope. I can imagine about this time, Joseph is remembering the promise God had made him in the dream that he had given him back there when he was just a 17-year-old kid there. But a spark of hope. He is going up the corporate ladder, so to speak, there. Now then, he is going to be exalted. And so we have the law of hope there. No matter what happens, no matter what despair we might encounter, young people and older people alike, if we're in God's hands, if God is with us, as Moses will repeat over and over in Genesis, between Genesis 37 and Genesis 50, that the Lord was with Joseph. And so if we know that the Lord is with us, then we can have hope. In my daily prayer, I thank the Lord. I thank the Lord for my health. I thank the Lord for my home. I thank the Lord for my hope. One of these days, God is going to take me out of this world to a world where there will be no shootings, where there will be no murders, where there will be no hatred, no prejudices or jealousies. In the meantime, what I need to do is just stay faithful, obey that law understand that law of happenings, the law there of honesty, and the law of hope. Just keep looking up, someone has said there. And so I can imagine when Joseph hears the call of Pharaoh there, hope sparks in his heart again. And I don't think there was ever a time the hope wasn't there. In all of his patience, it's one of the patience where I might could have thrown in an 8, the law of patience there. Joseph is 17 when he first encounters opposition with his brothers and with his parents. He is, I believe, 39. I was reading this afternoon, I want to say 39, 37, when he finally reaches the pinnacle, if you will, when he is second in command there in Egypt. And so it has taken him 17 from 37 would still be 20. If it's 39, it'd be 22 years there. He has been on that journey. God knew exactly where he was going all the time. Joseph didn't, but Joseph's faith was in God, and his hope was there. And now then it's beginning to take sight there, if you will. Now, number 4, there is the law of humility. Notice in verse 16 there, he says there, Pharaoh calls him in. And notice verse 15, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it, and I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. Notice Joseph's dream. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace, If we turn over to Daniel chapter 2 in verses 27 through 30, we see Daniel with that same attitude of humility. There's nothing in me. If I can do something, then it's because God simply chooses to do it through me. And so, verse 17, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph in my dream, and he tells him the dream, and Joseph is going to give him the answer to his dream there. So we have the law of happening, the law there of honesty, the law of hope, and the law of honor. Notice in verse 25, 28 here we have the law of honor after the law of humility. Look at verse 25 and 41. It said, and Joseph said unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. God has showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. Notice Joseph says, God is fixing to show you what God is fixing to do. In other words, Pharaoh, you're not in charge. God is sovereign, and we need to keep in mind ever that God is in sovereign. Look at verse 28. This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he sheweth unto Pharaoh. So the law of humility there, we need to make sure that we keep God as the sovereign one. Everything comes through his hands there as far as him directing our steps and ordering our lives. In verse 37, we have the sixth law. And that is the law of exaltation and prosperity. Somebody has said the greatest temptation in the world is the temptation of prosperity. It's easy to follow God when we are having to depend upon him for our daily bread. But when we have got the money of some of the rich cats today, how easy it would be for us to become exalted. Even the Apostle Paul, if we go to 2 Corinthians chapter 12, was troubled seemingly with this. After God took him up into the third heaven there, and Paul saw all that God has in store for us. Things that eyes haven't seen, ears haven't heard, neither has entered into the hearts of men what God has in store for them. God gives Paul a thorn in the flesh. And when Paul seeks, and you know the story, when Paul prays 3 times asking God to deliver him, God's answer is, Paul, my grace can carry you through even with that thorn in the flesh. Paul writes this, he said, because of the abundance of the revelation there was given unto me a thorn in the flesh, Satan buffeting me, but it was God that gave him, not Satan, it was God that gave him. Satan would not give Paul a thorn in the flesh that would keep Paul from becoming exalted or over-exalted there. But God wanted to keep Paul humble, and he used that thorn in the flesh. There's been many speculations as to what that thorn in the flesh was. Just lost his name there, but he's written a couple of books on David, God's soldier, I believe it is, and also on Paul, God's apostle. Anyway, he believed that Paul's thorn in the flesh was malaria, that from the stonings that he had gotten, that he would have times of malaria when he'd be totally out of his head and be totally dependent upon somebody else to take care of him until the fever was gone and he was back on his feet again. But the thing is, here in 41 verse 37, it said, and the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all of his servants. This is Joseph's promotion. Joseph having interpreted the dream, it pleased Pharaoh, it pleased Pharaoh's servant. And Pharaoh said unto his servant, can we find such a one as this, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, forasmuch as God has shewed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto my word, or thy word, shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, and he put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vesture of fine linen, and put a golden chain about his neck. And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried before him, bow the knee. And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. What an exaltation, what new power. Imagine going from a prisoner in a slave, in a sail, to the ruler of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh there. And yet we don't find a single occasion where Joseph allowed the exaltation there, became self-exalted anyway, but he followed that law there of humility and the law of exaltation and prosperity. He stayed true to the Lord. And then finally, number 7, we turn over to chapter 50. And we find here in chapter 50 the law of forgiveness. Look at verses 19 and 21 here in Genesis chapter 50. And Joseph said unto them, fear not, talking about his brothers there. After Jacob, his father, died, his brothers thought, well, Joseph was just nice to us for dad's sake. And after Jacob died, then they began to fear that now then that dad's out of the way, Joseph is going to come down on us for the cruelty that we bestowed upon him, the selling of him into, the casting him into the pit, the selling him into Egyptian slavery. But notice Joseph's attitude. And Joseph said unto them, fear not, for am I in the place of God? In other words, Joseph said, I've got, in the sense of the word, as far as down here in Egypt is concerned, I have the power of God. In other words, I can take your life or I can bless you, either one. And I'm at liberty to do whichever, and nobody is going to stop me from doing it. Basically is what Joseph is saying. But notice verse 20. But as for ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass as it is this day, to save much people alive. Now therefore fear ye not, I will nourish you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spake kindly unto them. And Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's house. And Joseph lived 110 years. So law number 7 is a law of forgiveness. All of us will stand before a God guilty until we are forgiven by the love of Christ. What an example of Christ here in Joseph's attitude. Lives 110 years. Joseph and Daniel and Joshua. Joshua also lived 110 years. We're not sure how many years Daniel lived. But you're 3 individuals that we have their life recorded from the time that they were young up till 110 years. You can't find a fault in the scriptures about Joseph. You can't find a fault in the scriptures concerning Daniel. You can't find a fault concerning Joshua. 3 individuals who knew the law of happenings. They understood that they were where God put them for the purpose that God had for them, and therefore they would walk with such integrity that they would deal honestly. They would humble themselves before God. They would promote God's sovereignty. to those who they had occasion to do so. And all the days of Joseph, you go ahead and finish the chapter. Joseph becomes a prophet here in chapter 50. He prophesies that one of these days, God is going to bring you, talking to his brethren, God is going to bring you back to the land of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the land that God had promised. And he took an oath from them that they would take his body back to Canaan and bury him there. And so here we have an example worthy to be followed. And it all starts out, I believe, with law number one, just understanding who God is. What happens to me happens because God is working in me to bring about that individual he wants us to be. Sometimes we fall so far short. Sometimes we fail. Sometimes we allow circumstances. We get our eyes on the circumstances instead of on the fact that God is in control. A wonderful verse to memorize, verse 50:19. Joseph said unto them, "Fear not, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." From the dreams that Joseph had when he was 17 years old, to the pit that he was cast into, to Potiphar's house where he was falsely accused and put into prison, where from the prison cells there, he was finally exalted to the throne of Egypt. God was in it. It was all being brought about by God because Joseph understood the law of happenings and the law of honesty and the law of hope and the law of humility and the law of forgiveness and the law of staying humble and not becoming overexalted in what God blesses us with. Father, as we come to you, Father, Lord, we look at Joseph and realize that, Father, Lord, he's just an individual, just a Jewish, well, I don't know that we could even call him Jewish, just a individual who somehow or another you saw in him, God, an individual who would trust you with their life. And consequently, you brought him, Lord, from the sheepfold to the palace of Egypt there. And God, you blessed him. And you used him to set forth an example worthy of all of us to follow. Just speak to each of our hearts. The next time the day's going bad, God, forgive us if we get our eyes on the circumstances. God, help us, Father, Lord, to just know that this is happening. And there's a law of happening. And it will turn to our good if we will but be faithful and keep our eyes upon you. May it be so in each of our lives. We ask you in Jesus' wonderful name. Amen. Let's stand. He doesn't want to die.